So definitely because this option requires more investment from the company, it's a little bit harder to get because obviously they need to front a bit more money than they would for, say, their local candidates. Just a note that if you happen to be legally allowed to work in that other country for some other reason, I know some people have dual citizenship in the EU, say, for example, then they don't, the company doesn't have to pay for your visa sponsorship, and they might only need to pay for your relocation costs, and it's not as expensive for the company. The other option is working remotely. So this is what it sounds like when you work at a company that's based in a different location than where you're living. So this can be in a couple of different ways. You can either be living in your home country or just another country in general where you're living, or some people take this a little further and they use it to travel around the world, go to the beach and work from the beach. If you've ever heard the term digital nomad, this is kind of where it comes from. And yeah, it's definitely a fun option. The salary you get is going to be based on where you're legally living and residing. So if you're, say, if your company is based in San Francisco, but you actually live in Mexico, you're going to be paid on a Mexican standard for software engineering if you're going for a software engineering job, and you're going to be paid in that currency, which is pesos. This option is often less expensive for the company if they're hiring out in a location where the salary standards are lower than where they're based. So this can kind of be a great way to, great thing to leverage if you do want to work in a country at a company that is abroad. There are different types of remote working. So you can either be a full-time employee or you can be a contractor slash freelancer. People kind of use these terms somewhat interchangeably. But full-time is when you're like fully employed with a company and you have access to their benefits. So that might be like healthcare or pension, different labor protections, like for example, not being able to be fired on the spot. Like if you lose your job, you'll usually get paid for a couple months after. And this just offers a lot more stability. On the other side of things with contracting, this is when you're kind of employed project to project and you might work 3 months at a time here, 1 month here, 6 months here, and you have the ability to kind of govern that and say like, I want to work this much at this time, and then I want to take a break, and then I want to work on a different project. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of time commitment and then also location because you can be remote and move around to different countries. Contracting has more of a rep of having higher pay just because companies don't have to provide you with the normal benefits that they give to full-time. And since they also don't have to pay for you to relocate, it ends up being that contractors get paid more. However, it's less stable in the sense that if you don't find a next project to go on to, then you might be out of work for a little bit of time. And the other thing is that if the company decides to lay you off, they can do it in a moment's notice. They don't have to warn you. And like you don't have the protection of knowing that if you lose your job, you'll be paid for 2 more months or 3 more months or something like that. Just something to note with remote working is that you have to be aware of time differences, especially if you're in Lebanon and your company is based in the United States. You're going to be maybe having some meetings in the middle of the night. And also just be sure to research labor and tax laws in the country that you're living in, and then also the country that you're getting the job in, because you want to avoid double taxation if you're going to be taxed, say in the UK, but then also in your home country residence. The other thing with remote working is it used to be something that was a little bit harder to get because or the way that people would fall into remote working jobs would be that they would start off working full time in the office in the location of the company, and then they would transition into working remotely once the company could see that they could trust that employee to get their work done. But times are changing a lot with COVID now, and a lot of companies are more open to the idea of hiring remotely and just letting remote work happen permanently. So we are in a very lucky time for that. So where to start your search? Where to start looking? The first thing is like that's going to be the most valuable is connections. So if you have a friend that works at a company in some country that you want to be working in, you should reach out to them and ask them for a referral. So referrals when they can tell the hiring manager, hey, like I know someone that might be good for this job that we're hiring for. And oftentimes that will like fast track you into the hiring process, interview process. And also companies are more willing to take a risk on you if they know that someone that they trusts you. Like I just said, yeah. Okay, so the other way is to go through job searching websites. You can search on any general job searching website, or you can search on ones that are particular to being relocated or working remotely. So these are some that I found when I was searching around. So this first one's just for abroad opportunities. The second is for, they have both abroad and remote, and the last one's just for remote jobs. I'm going to show a couple screenshots in the next slide of the first one because I really like it. It's called Relocate Me. Another way is to reach out to people on LinkedIn. If you've started researching companies that you know you want to work for, you should find other people that work at that company. Find something that you have in common with them, or just reach out to them in general and say, hey, I'm interested in your company. I just wanted to know like how you like it there, what kind of work you do. You never want to go in and just say like, hey, can you give me a referral? Like, hey, are you hiring? No one likes responding to those messages. So you always want to start just with like a friendly conversation where you're just you're just genuinely interested in what they do. And if you hit it off, maybe at the end they might offer to give you a referral. Yeah, and in general, it's just really good for building your network because once you connect with these people on LinkedIn, they might post about their company hiring and post job opportunities. So this is the Relocate Me website. It's really easy to just kind of search what roles you're looking for and what skills you have, and then you can search the country that you want. This is an example of kind of the top jobs that they offer. And if you look here, well, first of all, they show you where it's located. So in Amsterdam, in Munich, in Tokyo. And they also have these flags that say advanced relocation package or basic relocation package. And that just lets you know like how generous they're going to be when helping you move. So that might be through helping you get the visa sponsorship, which is the baseline. And then more advanced would be like helping you find an apartment and giving you money to actually move. So what do you actually look for when you're looking? The first is honestly for bigger companies. Bigger companies have more resources to hire than smaller ones, and it does cost money to relocate people. So looking for those. The second is international companies, especially ones with offices in different countries, because on the one hand, they're just more open to hiring internationally. And since they've probably done it many times before, they are just more familiar with the visa process and are less scared of it. And it's just easier for them. And it's also quite easy, or I wouldn't say easy, but it's like more of a possibility to transfer to different offices if you work for a company like this. So I'm going to talk about this a little more later, but um, say you really want to work in the United States, but it's hard to get a visa, you could start by working in the UK in a certain office and then ask to be transferred. You also want to search for jobs that are in cities with flourishing tech industries because obviously they'll just have more opportunities there. So these are some examples of places that have flourishing industries right now. These are just some, there's obviously many, many more. You also just want to search for jobs in places you'd actually want to live. So one way to approach this is once you find a place that you want to live, say you really want to live in Switzerland, just research the market there and see what skills they're looking for, and you can try to focus the things that you're studying and working on to build up your resume to be what that market is looking for. A lot of countries have for visas, they have like shortage occupation lists, which are just lists that show all the different types of jobs that are in demand in the country. Most of them have like technical roles on those lists, so you don't even really have to look. But some are a little bit more specific, and they'll say we're looking for web developers or we're looking for designers. So they're useful to look at. You also just want to see how feasible it is to live in a certain country. So researching the labor and tax laws, making sure it's actually legal for you to work there for a certain amount of time. Look at housing costs. Sometimes it's just maybe like your salary is going to be higher in a certain location, but the housing might and the living cost might be really, really high and not worth it. You want to make sure you're able to get healthcare when you're there. And then just thinking about language barriers. So, for example, if you want to move to Tokyo and the job that you have is in English and you can speak English, just beware that like once you leave the office, you're probably going to have to speak in Japanese at some point. So just thinking about, yeah, just what it will actually be like to live there. Let me go back. For example, with the housing costs in Switzerland, for example, I think there are no taxes on income, which is awesome. But then the housing costs and the cost of living are extremely, extremely expensive. So that's something to keep in mind. When you're looking at actual job listings that offer, you want to make sure they offer visa sponsorships and relocation packages. Or you don't have, they don't have to say that on the listing, but you just want to look out for it. But you also can look for job listings that don't mention visas at all, because that means there's a high possibility that they're not opposed to it. So I'm going to show you some screenshots and examples of job listings and what to look for on them. So this is a listing from that website, Relocate Me, that I showed you earlier. This one is based in Germany, and this one explicitly says what their relocation package is. So visa services, helping find an apartment, sign-up bonus. This website is also really cool because they show you just different stats about living in the city. So the cost of living and the average amount you're going to be paying for housing and how safe the city is, things like that. Some listings are going to have things like this that tell you that it's a remote only job. Some are going to have notes like this that say, at this time, we're only considering candidates that are authorized to work in whatever country. And then sometimes they just say the location and it's in another country, but the rest of the listing doesn't say anything about visa sponsorships. And so that's one of the cases where I would just apply. And once you start interviewing, well, first of all, they'll see on your application or your CV where you're located, and if it's a possibility for them, they'll reach out to you for an interview, and then that's something you will talk about later down the line. Okay, getting into the work visa territory. So, an overview is that many countries offer skilled worker visas. So, this is, when you have an occupation that requires maybe a higher degree or some specific skills that not just anyone can do. And so, thankfully, as I said before, many tech jobs fall in this category. Some of the requirements that will be that you need an employer sponsorship. So when you've got a job offer from a place and they agree to sponsor you, you can't just apply for skilled worker visas on your own. You also will probably need some prior experience, a higher degree, and language abilities. So like being able to speak English if you're gonna work in the UK, for example. Some countries use a point-based visa system. So some of these countries include Canada, the UK, and Australia. And what this means is that there might be different requirements to be qualified for a skilled worker visa, but you don't have to meet all the requirements. You just have to meet a certain combination of them that add up to a certain number of point values. So I'm going to show on the next slide an example of this. It's kind of hard to explain without seeing it. But here's a website that I found that kind of breaks down each of these places, Canada, UK, and Australia, and the US, and for what kind of requirements they have in their point-based systems. Some countries do have more lenient visa requirements than others. So these include Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. There's also a lot more, but these are just the ones that are generally known to have easier visa processes. And a lot of times having these visas can eventually lead to permanent residency status or citizenship. There are a lot of countries that want people to come and be citizens and to be residents. For example, in the UK, you can apply for citizenship after having lived and worked there for 5 years. Okay, here's an example of the point-based system for a skilled worker visa in the UK. So if you take a look at this left side of the screen, there's all these different requirements. And with each of them, there's an associated point value. And here at the bottom, it says a total of 70 points is required to be eligible to apply. So all you need to be able to apply is to have enough requirements where they add up, the points add up to 70. And some of these are optional and some of them are not. So these first three, it says they're not tradable. So you need to have all three of these. So a job offer from a sponsor, a job at an appropriate skill level, and being able to speak English. So already right here, if you have these, you have 50 points, and you just need 20 more out of the rest of these to qualify. So that's what is meant by a point-based system. So common routes that people take in order to obtain working visas. The first one is the most straightforward, which is just applying directly to jobs and getting sponsorship through them. Another thing that people do is, like I mentioned before, working for a company that has offices in different countries, and then after at least a year, working there, requesting to be transferred. Another way is to obtain a student visa first. So if you go to another country to study, and you're studying and you can work on the side, or you can work like during summer vacations. And then some of them offer opportunities to apply to stay in the country longer after completing your studies. usually for a year or a couple years. And sometimes that can lead to, say you start working for a company in that 1 year, and then they really like you and want to keep you on, they might help sponsor you for a skilled worker visa or another type of advanced visa. Oops, sorry. Some of these are messed up. Okay. Oh, just one final note on common routes. There's obviously also the marriage option. If you marry someone who is a citizen in another country, oftentimes there's uh, laws where you can get some type of visa to also work there. Okay, I'm going to go through some of the common US work visas just because obviously since I'm from the US, I just know a little bit more about them. And it's also just known for being more of a difficult place to obtain them and a little more complicated and less straightforward. So these are some of the common ways that people who are going for tech jobs get them. The first is the H-1B visa, which is for people who have degrees that are bachelor's degree or higher. And this is just very similar to the skilled worker visas that we've been talking about. So just needing an employer sponsorship. You can renew these every year for up to 6 years. So the amount of time that you're allowed to stay in the US would be 6 years before you have to apply for something else. And you can be applying for a green card while holding this visa, which a green card would grant permanent residency. The next most popular one is L1 for intercompany transfers. So this is what I mentioned before about starting to work in one country and then transferring to another office from that same company. There's the F1, which is for students. So if you're studying in the US and you can apply to stay a year after studies in the related field that you studied. And also, if you study engineering, you can add an additional 17 months to that year. The next one is J1, it's for internships. So if you are a student or a recent graduate or a person with 5 years of experience, which I'm not sure why they have that one, but if you want to do an internship in the US, you can get a temporary visa, which would probably only last, I'm not sure exactly, but maybe the length of a summer or a semester. And then there's the green card, which is for permanent residency, which it gives you the same benefits as a US citizen minus the ability to vote. I got all of this information from a blog where this person went through all the visas and how they relate to like if you're a software engineer, which is really cool. So I included the link here, which you can check out when I send these slides out later. Okay, coming up on the end here, just last tips and things to keep in mind. So you're already in a really great position by having technical skills and looking for jobs abroad, just because they're in such high demand and they're all on like short job occupation shortage lists. Like it's way easier than maybe for some other occupations to get these jobs. Also because in the tech industry, there's just a lot of money in general. So a lot of big companies just have the resources to relocate people. I just saw the chat about sending the slides later, and yes, I will do that. Okay. So the other thing is just that more experience, more years under your belt of working, you're gonna get more opportunities abroad. Like I said, it's just an investment for companies to relocate people, and they're more willing to do it when they know you're gonna provide a lot of value to the company. So with that being said, it could be useful to gain a couple years of experience at home before you start applying to these jobs. While you're interviewing, once you actually start getting the interviews, you don't want to ask for visa sponsorship in your interviews. You don't want to draw attention to the fact that you don't have one and that they will have to sponsor you. It will come up eventually, but when companies really want someone, they like look for talent first, and then they'll do what it takes to get you. But if they do ask you if you need sponsorship, you don't want to lie. You should definitely tell them that you're going to need that. The last thing is that when you're actually in these interviews, you should have researched the salary expectations for whatever country that job is in, so that if they ask you what you're expecting to be paid, you just know kind of the standards and can negotiate a little bit more. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I've included this slide of different resources that I use to put together this presentation. But there's a lot of information out there and stuff that I didn't have time to include in this workshop specifically. But yeah, there are a lot of really great resources. I know I just gave a pretty general overview and didn't dive that deeply into specific countries, but that's just because like every country is so different, and I just want to give you the tools to be able to do this research on your own and to know what to look out for. But with that being said, does anyone have any questions? I know that was a lot to take in.
Hello,
Hi.
can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much for the presentation. I just have one question out of curiosity. When you mentioned that uh, basically people like are based in countries, so for example Lebanon, and have a work in the US, so
Hmm.
they got paid a salary based on the US or based on LBP.
Right, they're going to be based on whatever the salary is in Lebanon if you're working from Lebanon. That's just because usually when you're wherever you're a resident, the idea is like keeping the economy at a certain level. So the idea is that like if you're living in a certain place, you're going to be spending money in that place and paying taxes in that place and benefiting from services in that place. So they want to pay you a salary that's like standard to that place that you're living in. But if you were to move to the US, you would get a US salary, even if it's the same country.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mhm. The other thing with that though is I know, so kind of like you don't ever really regress backwards in terms of salary rates. So for a lot of people who end up getting salaries in the US or the UK, places where salaries are generally higher, and then they move to a country where salaries are generally lower, companies will often continue paying them the higher rate because they know that there's like competition. Like they would rather stay in the US or the UK if they're going to get a higher salary. So, for example, in my company, a lot of engineers move to China but are from the UK or the US, and they'll be paid a UK or US salary while they're in China, even though there's people there who are doing the same job but are getting paid in a lower Chinese salary, which is not very fair, but that's kind of how the industry works sometimes when they know there's competition. I see that there's a question in the chat. It says, how can we benefit from the free courses to get a job? Are these recoded free courses, or which free courses are you referring to? Oh, free online courses. Yeah. So in general, um, like when I was talking about when you're researching the market and what skills are in demand for a certain city or a certain country, if you see that there's like some skills, like maybe like JavaScript developers are like very high demand in some place, then you can take online courses on JavaScript development and like use that to add to your CV when you're applying. I don't know if that answered your question, but if it didn't, shoot me another message. Okay. How about people having technical diplomas? Are they in demand or just people in tech? Um, yeah, in terms of like having technical diplomas, yeah, anyone who just has technical skills are in demand. And I know that like some of these visas say like you need, or like some of the requirements are that you have a degree, um, or not, but it really, in tech, the world just works differently because a lot of people know that you don't need certain degrees in order to like be able to code. A lot of people go to coding boot camps and are just as talented or more talented than people who've studied computer science at university. And so it's kind of just whatever skills you have to bring to the table will help you, and you can show a company that you can provide value to them, they will do what they can to get you a visa.
Hello, thank you
Hi,
for the presentation. I have a
of course.
question. If I was looking remote jobs for front-end developing jobs,
Hmm.
whenever I want to look to a job, they always state that I need an experience,
Hmm.
even if I want to work abroad or remotely. How to gain this experience if I can't get an experience for the job?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something that people are always struggling with. Um, the first thing is like to look specifically for internships or programs that are for people who have zero experience. And so the way that you have to get those, right, is to show that you, whatever you studied, like you have skills that will like, that give you potential to be able to do the job. So whatever courses you've taken are helpful, but also if you do side projects and like do projects on your own that show that you know how to apply the knowledge you learned in your studies to an actual project, that's honestly what gets most people and internships and what's the other one, like new graduate positions. And so yeah, the most people I know that like enter into the professional world do so via internships, um, and things like that. And also, I'm not sure if you're in university or not, but if you are like getting doing research positions with professors, is also helpful. Any type of experience is important in order to get those jobs. But it is really challenging.
شو بدي
Um,
اقدر اسالها سؤال؟
So if I did the freelancing
Exactly.
project,
sorry.
I mean freelancing project, if I made something on my own, like a
Mhm.
customer come to me and do a front end project for him, this is
Yeah.
considered experience?
Yeah, that's like better than doing your own personal project because it shows that you can work with a customer. You can take a list of requirements and translate it into something that works, a product that works. And so that's more than like I would even expect for experience for an internship. So yeah, that's like a really great way to do it. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very
Mhm.
much.
Okay, more questions in the chat. You mentioned more experience equals more opportunities. Does experience mean personal projects, freelancing projects, or internships, previous companies? Okay, in general, yes, all of these things are considered experience. But when I mentioned that, I specifically meant, well, freelancing projects but mostly previous professional work experience at a company. So like if you can get, a job in your home country and work professionally there for a couple years will help you a lot when applying to ones abroad. Okay, the next question is, if I want to live in a specific European country and it's hard to get a visa, do you think it's better to apply to an easy European country than after I get the visa apply to a hard country for European country. Yes, that is definitely a way that many people go. Um, Also, like, there's just so many countries that have so many job opportunities that like you're still gonna get really good experience no matter where you go. Um, so like do whatever you need to do in order to get a visa. But yeah, it's like once you get that experience, it will open so many doors, and not even just like the experience on your resume or your CV, but also the connections you're going to make with the people that you meet there. Say you go to Ireland because it's one of the easier places to get a visa, and Ireland is right next to the UK. And so I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have connections and know people that work at companies in the UK that can set you up and get you a referral for a company in the UK that will be willing to sponsor you. So it's definitely a very strategic way to get in there.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Mindy. I have a question. So since you mentioned Ireland, can you list some more countries like Ireland? Do you think also Luxembourg is an alternative also that can be an easy country for getting a visa or something?
Yeah, so let me go back. Okay, so let's see, this link here, 6 countries where it's easy to snag a work visa. It's a good resource. But they mention Ireland, Australia and New Zealand, and the Netherlands. And there's a few other ones in here as well. There's 6. But yeah, definitely check out this link. It's definitely different. For a lot of these countries are also just easy to get a work visa for any type of occupation, not even for a skilled worker visa or for software engineering. So yeah, I would definitely check out this link.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I got just one more thing. I got hired
course.
3 years ago by a multinational company that has an office in
Nice.
Lebanon. So after 3 months, I was supposed to move on an international assignment to Italy. So I got there to Italy and I got my work permit. They worked on my immigration and everything. I got my
Mhm.
residency and all of that. They invested in me for 1 year in intensive training in Italy and across Europe, Finland, Switzerland, and many places. And after that, I was supposed to go back to Lebanon and lead some activities here, some promotion activities. But
Mhm.
starting 2019, I've been working a lot to move again out of Lebanon. I was working on both internally in our company and outside our company to move abroad. It was really a
Mhm.
very, very tough procedure until 2020 when I got the opportunity. There was serious talks to move again back to Italy, to Bergamo, where the most city that was hit by the pandemic. So after that, everything was cancelled. Later on, our office closed in Lebanon, then got an offer to relocate to Abu Dhabi, then it was withdrawn, the offer. And after that, there's no talks. So I am finding it a bit hard to move again abroad. And even with my CV being very attractive to competitors of my company, and
Mhm.
even for some specific positions that they asked for, I tried to apply, but
Mhm.
even with no success. I don't know if you have any recommendation or anything you can have any added value or any hint that can make any difference. I don't know.
Yeah, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about all of that. It's definitely a really hard time for the market in terms of finding jobs, especially ones abroad because of COVID. And I mean, it sounds like a lot of your um, the moments of like getting offers withdrawn or this or that, it's like a lot of it has to do with the circumstances of right now, and it's not that much about like your abilities. And so I wouldn't like lose hope in that sense. Um, I think, I mean, since you've worked in Italy and in other places already and you have connections, I think I would just keep leveraging those connections and like get more referrals and ask people what they know and who they know that are hiring. Otherwise, I think like a good way would be like what you did before, is like working in Lebanon for an international company first, remotely or in person if there's an office, and then trying again to transfer. Sorry, I don't have like super helpful tips. It's like, it sounds like it's a tricky situation, but I would just keep trying.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. It was helpful. No worries. It was helpful.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
Okay, there's some more questions in here. Is it hard to get a visa in the UK? I think with as a person that has technical skills, I don't think it's the hardest place to get a visa. I think it's a hard place for people who don't have those skills, but there's just so many companies that have the resources to relocate people and to sponsor visas. And I think that the visa, like my visa, costed around £1,400, which for a very rich company is not that much money. So I don't think that the UK is that hard of a place, but I'm also just speaking from my own experience, and I don't know for everyone. If I manage to continue my university study major in France, for example, and I applied for a remote front-end job, would I be paid in euros? Do you mean that you would be studying in France, or would you be applying for that job while you're in France or while you're in Lebanon? Okay. Wait. Oh, here. You would apply for the job in France. You would, oh, okay. Yeah, you would be paid in euros. It's wherever you're living or are like authorized to work and live. Okay. Got you. Okay. I'm a dental lab student graduating in like 3 months. Is everything you talked about can be applicable to my major? It's definitely possible. I'm not really familiar with dental studies when they in terms of like work visas, but it is a professional profession. So I would just check out the different like shortage occupation lists and skilled worker lists for different countries. So for example, this link here, shortage occupations in the UK, you can look through and see if dentistry is on there. I'm sure that like definitely in some countries, like it would be. So I would just check on that. But in general, like a lot of these tips are applicable to any higher level occupation or career. I would just say that like it's more a little easier for people in tech, mostly because tech companies have so much money to relocate people. Okay. If I have a PhD in computer science, is it necessary to get an experience to submit a job application? Not necessarily. I mean, yes, experience in the way that we kind of discussed before, of like an experience could be a project that you do by yourself, or it can be an internship or freelance. But having a PhD is like a very, very high level degree, and there are a lot of countries that would just value that for what it is. But it's mostly going to be what the company is looking. Honestly, like I think people with PhDs have a higher chance of getting job interviews, and like a lot of companies do really value that. But I don't think it's never absolutely necessary to have experience when you're applying to jobs in tech, especially. But it's so case by case. It's like so particular to different companies and what they're looking for. But if you can, always just have side projects that you do on your own, like on the weekend or after work or after school. Cool. Can we watch the meeting again? I'm not sure. Christine?
Sure, yes. When I send along the slides, I can send along the recording as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, one more question here. If I applied to university for, let's say, Germany that offers a student visa with a limited work permit, can I still work in the tech industry in the same way as a regular employer? And would the application process and related stuff be similar? If you're applying in the university is it for computer science or for like something technical? A lot of times, actually, I'm not like super sure about this, but I know at least for the US, the job that you get after university needs to be in the related field that you studied. So I don't think you could study biology and then get a job in technology. But I don't think that's necessarily the same first of all, it's not the same for all countries. So you should investigate that for Germany specifically. And then secondly, I think it's probably different when you're currently enrolled in school and like doing this as your side job or during the summer. I feel like the regulations won't be as strict. Also, the tech industry is always just like looking for people no matter what. So I'm honestly, I think that like you could, but I would just do more research on that. Also, Germany is one of those places that I think does have a little bit more leniency when it comes to work permits. So, yeah. Sorry, I can't give you more specific information on that. Of course. Cool. Does anyone have any other questions? Also, when
Hello.
Oh, hi.
So I have basically two questions. The first one is if I'm a software engineer and I have a personal website, and if I put a link on that in my resume, do employers usually check the personal websites in the hiring process?
Sorry, the person's outside. What do you mean by that?
No. Do employers usually check the personal websites in the hiring
Oh,
process?
personal
So if I
websites.
have my own, yes.
Right. I think so. I think they're mostly interested in like your GitHub account or anything that can lead to things that you've actually built. And so if you built your website, I mean, they're probably going to want to check and see that. So I'm sure, I don't know, I've never been a hiring manager, but I'm pretty sure they do look at that. The thing with tech companies is they really just want to know that you can code and that you can learn quickly. And so like, I mean, it's kind of sad, but like a lot of times I'm a software engineer, but there's so many other things in my life that I've done. Like I dance and I like love education and I teach a lot. And I always put those things on my resume, but I've been told many times that no one looks at that stuff and they only want to see what my coding experience is and my personal projects and things like that. So like that's like the sad kind of honest truth about tech recruiting. But anything that can give them insight into like how good of a programmer you are is gonna help you a lot. So yes, like if you're gonna put that on your resume, you should.
Okay, and actually GitHub was my second question. So is it better to be a contributor to other people's projects or to have my own project that can showcase my skills?
I mean, it's definitely gonna be better to have projects that are led by you. So there's like kind of a difference when they're looking for what projects have you led and do you know how to like design and manage a project, especially if you have other contributors contributing to your project. That looks really good. But it's also so valuable to show that you can contribute to other people's code because it shows that you can learn, or you can like look at a project, look at a code base and understand it and learn what you need to do and then add to it. And that's honestly what you're going to be most likely doing at your first job or in your entry level positions in tech is going to be like looking at a code base, learning from it, and then contributing to it. So it's definitely valuable for both, I would say.
Okay, thank you. I have a third question if no one else wants to ask anything. So let's say, for example, I am a software developer that I'm specialized mainly in web development, but it's because it's the only job opportunity that I got offered. But I'm really interested in artificial intelligence and other aspects of software development and computer engineering. So a hiring manager in a company that is specialized in the topics that I am interested in. So he's gonna look at my CV and he's gonna say that this person has experience in web development, but he cannot help me. So why would they hire me?
Is the position for web development or for artificial
No,
intelligence?
it's so I'm looking for a job opportunity in artificial intelligence, but all the experience that I have is in web development.
Oh, I see. I think it depends on what level the job opportunity is. If it's an entry-level position, then they might see that you know how to code and that you have experience like working in technical spaces, and they might take a chance on you. Otherwise, I think it's always possible to like try to get a job at that company, in a company that you want to work for that has artificial intelligence, but start off as a web developer. And then while you're there, build connections with the people that are there. A lot of people in the tech industry, they make moves in their career by starting off in one position, learning about other positions, and like talking to the other people in those positions, getting referrals, getting connections, and then like transitioning in that way. But also if artificial intelligence is something you really want to get experience at, in the meantime, you should take online courses or enroll in any type of course you can and put that on your CV as well.
Okay, great. And does it also apply if I am in a senior position but in web development?
Yeah, I mean, that just shows more that you're like more capable than say an entry level software engineer or web developer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So we're a little over time, but let me just answer the rest of the questions in the chat and then we will wrap up from there. Let's see. Okay. So if I graduated and get my degree, but also want to do another major abroad and work at the same time, which kind of visa do you recommend to work on? That's a good question. I think probably the student visa. I think you need a student visa in order to be studying. I'm not sure if you can study while having only a work permit. I'm not sure. It will really depend on the country that you look into, but yeah, I think yeah, I don't know that much about that. So you're gonna have to research that a little bit on your own. I'm sorry. I think they do. Yeah, okay. Combination of majors can build a strong resume, like being a computer engineer and doing a product management career. It's a plus? Yes, definitely. Any additional experience that you have in anything related to tech is always helpful. Oh yeah. Ollie has a good point about student visas and not having to pay taxes. So yes, do the student visa. Small question. So what are the most needed programming language for the next years? That's a good question. I don't really know. But if you're talking about like front end development, I know that like React and Angular are leading in the industry right now. I think that the industry changes so quickly, and that's why I said whatever country you want to work in, you should research what skills and languages are in demand in that specific place. Also Python. Python is always relevant. Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was a great session and you had really great questions. when Christine sends out the links, I'll also include my contact information if you want to ask me any more questions. But like I said, I don't know that much about the specifics of different countries, but I can help guide you towards like specific resources that would be helpful.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mindy, for this wonderful session. Thanks everyone for joining us with all of these great questions. As you can see, I have posted in the chat the link to the applications to our upcoming coding bootcamp in North Lebanon. So please take a look at that and see if that's something that you're interested in and would like to apply for. In the meantime, we wish you a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you soon in all of our upcoming workshops. So thanks again so much, Mindy, for your time, and thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening.
Bye, everyone.